Okay, yeah, I think this will do. Sorry, guys, my hobby room's a mess, and I already had this set up because I got all the B-roll stuff. So here we go. Hey guys, Rise House Harris here, and in this video today, we're gonna jump into this TLR 22 5.0 Elite kit, and I went to my first carpet race. So I'm gonna jump into the beginning of that adventure here in just a second, and then we'll come back and I'll walk you through like my setup and the race day itself. So see you in a second.
All right. So, welcome to the video, everyone. Real quick, gonna do something a little bit, give you guys a rundown of what's gonna go into my bag for the race this weekend. We are going to Super Cup round number 1. It's over at Beachline, Cocoa Beach, Florida. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So, obviously, the car over there. Billy, he's gonna stay home. Stupid dog. All right, so let's see. Let's start with the big stuff here. We got our Sanwa M17 radio sitting in there. Wireless chargers up in the front pouch over there. And we got our iCharger with a power supply, discharge bank. All the charge leads are up in that pouch up there. Power strip, light, nice setup board. This one from Shell. Pit stand, little car stand. These things are really nice. It's foam and it has holes in it. So when I'm rebuilding my shocks, I can just set them up in there as I'm building them. Really nice and handy to have. Pit mat, obviously that's gonna go down underneath everything. Goof off aerosol spray. That's really nice when you're mounting up some fresh tires and taking off the residue on the tire itself, or just cleaning up anything that's really nasty. Pledge, really nice to clean the cars. Just kind of give it a fresh spritz and then wipe everything down with a towel. Some super glue. Soldering iron, because I will be possibly changing out some of my motor stuff throughout the weekend, so it's just always nice to have. Wheels, obviously, and a bunch of tires and inserts underneath there. Tires for the weekend, I already have some glued up. So we have the Proline Prisms in the Z4 compound. Prism 2.0s in the Z4 compound in the rear. The Wedge 3.0 that we're gonna try, just in case. This is basically just like arms, shock ends, stud mounts, all kinds of different stuff in here. Just random goodies that will just be in the box. This is my oils. Still a bunch of AE oils that I haven't used up yet. Some of the TLR stuff, but this is how I keep like my shock oils and my diff fluids. We have our audio entertainment stuff that we might need for the weekend. We have a JBL Charge 3, just if I want to sit that in my pit table, listen to whatever. Then we have these guys. These are my Sony's wireless Bluetooth headphones. These things are really nice, kind of cool. They have like you can navigate through all of your stuff just by touching the side of the speaker. Something I like to do, I saw it from Jackson Brunson, actually, was the guy that I saw this from. But these little containers to organize all my screws and stuff. So I just have like nuts, pill inserts, shock goodies, just all kinds of random things that if this whole thing is to like fly open, which it has happened before, it's nice to keep them secure. Extra stuff, weights, pivot blocks, blah, 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 pinions. I kind of should organize it a little better. Sway bars. Then in here, we just have all of my MIP wrenches, some pliers, scissors, shock tools, turnbuckle wrenches, stuff, greases, oils, thread locks, springs, some extra parts, and then some extra shocks. On the TLR stuff, the thick shock shaft is like one particular setup, and then the other ones, which are actually on the car right now, are the thinner shock shaft, and you kind of need different shock setups to run those. So I just have them ready to go in case I want to switch back and forth from them. Bye, Philip. Batteries, just ready to go in case I need some extra batteries. Motors, in case I need to swap out some motors. Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Calipers, so that when I'm setting the droop or the stroke length on my shocks, definitely the best way to do that. Ride height gauge, camber gauge, power tools for the weekend. Since it's carpet racing, I'm not gonna need my power drill, but in case I need to cut up like a fresh wing, something like that, got that there. And then my Milwaukee drill, the battery's being charged right now, but that's what I use to tear down and assemble my cars. And that's all the stuff. So gonna go ahead and load that up in the bag and get headed out for the weekend. So here we go.
As you guys saw, we went to Beachline Raceway over in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and it is a awesome facility. The carpet is fairly new with brand new subfloor. Everything is just really nice, and I consider myself fortunate to have raced there. Now, I've never raced on carpet before, but I did my best to kind of learn, document, and share with you guys everything that I learned along the way. So let's go ahead and take a look at the car. So, like I mentioned before, this is the TLR 22 5.0, the Elite kit, and we've kind of converted it into a carpet version. So we did things like sway bars and change hub heights and all that stuff. All of the setup information I'm about to go over is linked down below, and I have that setup that I filled out to the best extent of all the things that I knew that I did to the car and the current settings it has. I felt really good with the car over the weekend. We developed a lot of pace throughout the weekend, made some small changes, and got it to a point where it was very easy to drive, considering. And it was very easy to be consistent, meaning it didn't require a lot of effort to kind of put in hero lap after hero lap to go fast. I kind of was able to just dial it into like a 90% effort and then just keep putting in lap after lap after lap. Now, I think it's important to note that when you're looking at carpet setups or any cars in particular, you kind of have to start with knowing exactly what tires they have on the car and then look at the setup, because your setups might vary based on the tires that you're using. So, without further explanation, I am using the Proline Z4 compound Prism 2.0s. We have the prisms in the rear with the little square edge treads, I guess is what they're called, on the outside of the tire to be a little bit more aggressive. Up front, we have the prisms. Now, one thing that was hugely important to the setup of this car was how much glue I put on the sidewall of that front tire. So to kind of start the weekend, I went on the passive side, or the less responsive side, and I glued all the way up the side of the tire. And that made the car a little bit easier to drive. It didn't initiate the steering as fast, and it allowed me to kind of get used to the carpet racing. But as I went on through the weekend, I knew that I wanted a little bit more steering. So I ended up knocking it down, and I really liked it where I had the glue at half the height of the sidewall. That's where I got the balance of responsiveness and edginess to sit right where I wanted it. Now, the next thing that I think is kind of fairly important to note when looking at this particular setup is that I've opted to run the thin shock shaft setup. The TLR 22 5.0 Elite kit comes with the 3.5 millimeter shock shafts. As a alternative, you can run a setup where you have the thinner shafts. Talking to a lot of the TLR guys, it seems that the thinner shock shafts have a little bit more of a response to them. The car is a little bit more mellow with the bigger shock shafts. So if you find yourself in a situation where that's your desired end result, then you could run something like that. On the carpet, however, it's very tricky to get the landing of the car to be exactly the same lap after lap after lap, and kind of give yourself as much forgiveness as possible so that you can nail that landing at the bottom of a transition of a jump where the ramp is ending and then you're entering the flat. Usually the fastest place to land in most scenarios, if it's possible, is the rear tires on the ramp side and the front tires on the flat. So landing right there smack dab on the transition gives you the best kind of like forward momentum and settling the car. Sometimes if you get it just a little bit off, or you're a little bit, here or there, the car can kind of unsettle or bounce a little bit more than you want. And it's really not a setup issue as much as it is your driving style or ability to nail that landing absolutely perfect. Talking with the TLR guys, running the thin shock shaft setup seemed to allow me to do those things more consistently, and I really liked it. Also, I'm running the aluminum caps on the top. This gives you 2 extra millimeters of up travel compared to the composite shock caps. A lot of guys kind of like one or the other, so I say try them both out and see which one works for you. Diving into the shocks a little bit more, we are running AE V2 shocks. This is pretty standard. We have the AE V2 grays in the rear and the AE V2 yellows up front. I tried something a little bit stiffer just to see if I could carry a little bit more corner speed, but it really just pushed the car to a point where it became almost unresponsive and it just didn't steer fast enough. So I went from whatever's one stiffer to the yellow to back down. Pistons on the inside, we're running the thin pistons. I think that these are adding to the level of consistency that you can get out of these TLR shocks. And then I started off the weekend on 40 weight oil up front and 35 in the rear, and that was a little soft. I didn't know how cold it was going to be, and it kind of warmed up a little bit by the time the mains rolled around in qualifying. So I went to 37.5 and 42.5 up front, just to kind of calm the car down a little bit. Maybe if I had another day of practice, I would be curious to see how 45-40 would have felt. As far as the steering configuration, there's a lot of tuning options that you have on this car that's new to me, and I didn't really play around with them too much because I'm not comfortable with knowing exactly what it's going to do. So I kind of was in a rush to get the car to a point where I knew it was competitive, I had pace, and it felt comfortable. So as soon as I got to that point, whatever it was, I kind of stuck with it and I just drove it from that point on. But if I'm going to go back and try some more carpet testing, something that I would like to try is playing with a trailing arm position versus the little Ackerman plate or steering arm that I would use. So I'm using the number 5 steering arm, which is kind of like the middle ground. I think there's a 4, 5, and a 6. 4 being the most initial steering and 6 being, the opposite of that. And then the trailing arm position, this is something that I'm totally new to this. I'm not an authority by any means, but it was something that I saw when I went with the kit setting of the 4 position. The car didn't have enough initial steer for what I'm used to and what I like. So I moved it forward to the 3 position to give me a little bit more initial steer. But what I would like to try if I ever went back would be going to the number 4 steering arm and then going back to the furthest back trailing position, which is what most people run. So just something I want to try in the future, but just a heads up so that you guys know exactly why I had that on my car. All the electronics and horsepower goodies, nothing new here. BK servo up front, the little shorty servo there. Been using those now for over a year. They're awesome, work great. Hobbywing XR10, the G2. This is the Passion Red edition. I've been running these now for, I think this is going on like my 2nd season. Love these ESCs, plan on running them for the rest of the year. As far as like a ESC tuning, I don't really do anything other than I adjust the drive frequency. When you run on the higher bike conditions, especially something like carpet or AstroTurf, I always run them in like the lower frequency range. So I think the first position would be a 1000 frequency, and I think I had mine at 2000 all weekend long. Whereas when I go to a little bit looser dirt condition, I tend to go up around like 8000. It just smooths out the delivery of the punch of the trigger. Doesn't make any difference. Once you're wide open, you're wide open. It's just how it feels from when you go from 0 to the 100% value, if that makes sense. Trinity horsepower now, coming up on I think 3 years that I've been using this stuff. So Trinity white carbon battery, working good, awesome all weekend long. I had the 4000 milliamp battery. These are the ones that I tend to run in the stock class. They give plenty of power, plenty of runtime, great internal resistance. Going to be running those for the foreseeable future as well. Trinity X Factor 17.5. This is a certified edition, so it's got some ceramic bearings in there, a little bit tighter tolerances of some of the components, and it's just been a phenomenal motor since I got my hands on one. Interesting thing that we were trying throughout the weekend was playing around with some rotors. We tend to use the TEP 1119, the copper rotor, on most of the dirt applications. Something that we played around with was a rotor that's being used in the oval scene. I think it's the turquoise rotor. I'll link the part number down below. I don't know it off the top of my head, but that one, it seems to be really popular in having like a wide power band, like kind of in the middle, or it's easy to keep it spooled up and keep your momentum going. So it was something that Kevin, he literally was sitting across from me in the pit area and said, "Hey Ryan, I built up a motor that's a little bit more like what the oval guys run. Do you want to try it?" I said, "Sure, why not?" So I put it in for, I think, the 2nd round of qualifying, and I really liked it. It was really easy to stay in the right power band. It didn't have as much punch as the copper rotor, but it was the same on top end, and I just really liked the way it felt in that middle power band. I thought it was really neat, something I'll continue to play around with if I go back to these carpet races. As far as how the motor was geared, we had it geared at a 69 tooth spur and a 27 tooth pinion. That was something that I felt pretty good with over the weekend. Didn't really want to change that, regardless of what rotor I was running. That was definitely the sweet spot for gearing for that particular track. That's everything as far as setup goes, so let's go ahead and jump into the main event here. We had a pretty good qualifying effort throughout the day. There was a couple times where before making some mistakes, I was on a TQ pace and really close to a TQ pace, so I knew it was going to be a really interesting main event, or potentially. So we'll go ahead and jump into the main here. I qualified 2nd, and so we'll go ahead and jump into that, and then I'll come back and we'll wrap this puppy up.
Kurt Marshall's ready. Keep your eye on the corner. This is for all the marbles. This is A2. The racer's ready. You guys are going live in less than 5. And we're off. Good. Clean start. Boogie. Here we go. It's DJ. Starting on that #1 position. Trying to take A2 in the overall win. Caution coming off the stair step. Caution coming off the stair step. That's it. Yep. There you go. Clear. DJ. White buggy. Ryan Harris. Orange and red buggy with yellow wheels. That is 1 and 2. Got Daniel Chavez. Pushing hard right there in that 3rd position. Trying not to let these guys run away with it. Marco behind you. That's a hard one to see. But thank you. Broken. All right, just pull him off. Keep off to the side. Let's go racing. 1 down, 4 to go. 1 down, 4 to go. It is a 3-car freight train breakaway. Actually, with Billy Bruce right there, it's a 4-car freight train. He is chiseling the time down lap after lap. Ryan right there. Harris trying to put it 3rd overall on the podium. He is sitting 2nd in this race. He is 4 seconds back from Chavez. The Chavez is trying to check out. Got himself some clean track. Going through the infield, through the chicane, down around the carousel he goes. Next car he sees will be Billy Bruce, but they're about a straightaway apart from each other. Billy sitting in that 6th place overall right now. So it's Daniel, Harris, TJ, Kenny, and Ramos top 5 in this race. You got 25 seconds left, 25 seconds. Your leader working over the double now. Keeping it clean, keeping it smooth. Looking really good out there on 18.507 pace. Absolutely trying to blister A Main's overall time. 3, keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Cross the stripe and you are done, cross the stripe and you are done. A few more to finish, a few more to finish. Wait on Harris, wait on Harris. That'll do it, back it down. Daniel Chavez is going to take the overall win in expert 2-wheel drive buggy stop.
Well, not really a super eventful main event, but I was really happy with the speed that we got out of the car for the first time we went to a carpet track. And I always kind of pat myself on the back a little bit that I was able to keep it together for 5 minutes without any major mistakes or needing to be marshaled. I know I don't always crank out the hot laps, but something that I always try to strive for is consistency, because that is ultimately what wins races. So that's it for my first carpet adventure. I hope you guys liked it. If you learned something, drop a comment down below. Let me know. If there's any other questions you have, drop them down below. Try and answer them for you as best I can, or I'll point you in the direction where you can find those answers. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much. I will see you in the next one. I can't reach the camera. Oh, man. Wait. You guys, you need to see this shirt. It's really freaking cool. Hang on. Let me widen this shot. It's a World Outlaw. Steve Kinzer. Look at that. Look at the back. Pretty cool. That's what I get for going on eBay at like 2 in the morning. See you guys next time.